Okay, cool. So yeah, hey everyone, welcome to our Vue.js meetups number 2. It's fantastic to see not so many at the moment, but probably someone will join us later a little bit. Today, I'm excited to dive into our today's topic. So first of all, let me tell you some things about us, about EpicMax. So every single developer from our company are passionate with Vue.js. We all united by our love to coding and to open source. Also, EpicMax proudly partners with industry leaders like frameworks Vuetify and PrimeVue, and also job board for Vue.js developers, VueJobs. So we developed and continue supporting 3 open source projects with over 17,000 stars on GitHub. In their count as Vuestic UI, our main free UI framework with 60 plus ready-to-use components. Also Vuestic admin, an admin template built using Vue 3 with Pinia and Tailwind CSS, and also small library Epic Spinners, a collection of pure CSS loading spinners. Moving forward, whether you just getting started with Vue.js or you have been building amazing project with it for a while, our meetups is still about learning, connecting, and growing. So if you want to present something, you can easily contact with us by email on the screen, and we'll, include you in our meetups, probably. Thank you, guys. So glad to see you there, and let's move on to our topics. This is our agenda for today. I will not talk about every point too much because we will introduce that in the moment of speech. So first of all, the first topic will be from me. I'm Pavel, front-end developer in EpicMax, working in the front-end like 5+ years. Have a lot of experience in small and big projects. So my topic for today is just small tech updates of latest news I choose to share with you. So let's dive into it. So what's new in the front-end world? I will speak about 3 things, actually. First of all, CSS finally adds vertical centering in 2024. I was waiting for that so long. Also, a new ECMAScript self-assignment operator proposal, which will help us to handle some try-catch things. And also, denote to announce. Let's go to the first topic. So CSS finally adds vertical centering in 2024. As you probably know, we had a lot of ways how we can center vertical block in the front-end projects, right? If you remember, we was using some kind of table cells, absolute positioning, inline content, also single and multi-line flex boxes, grid, content and cells, and some auto margin, right? Right now, we don't need all of that to vertical center our block. We can just use one single CSS property, align content center, and our block will be easily centered vertically. So you don't need to make any flexbox, any grid, and you don't even need to wrap your content in extra div to make things like that. Already supported by main engines, so feel free to use it. The next one is quite important topic, new ECMAScript self-assignment operator proposal. So JavaScript error handling is about to get major update. The new self-assignment operator proposal is here to streamline your code by reducing the new traditional try-catch blocks. So let's take a look what kind of problems we have and why do we actually need this kind of proposal. So first of all, traditional try-catch blocks, which often lead to deeply nested code, making it harder to read and to maintain. So right there, operator reduces nesting, transforming the result of a function into a tuple. So if the error occurs, it returns error, and the second item in the array will be null. Otherwise, we'll have the opposite situation. If we don't have an error, we'll get null as the first element of the array, and the actual data response as a second one. The next problem is, the try-catch blocks can clutter code and disrupt the flow logic. And operator makes error handling more intuitive, as you can see on the screen, and keeping your code linear and easy to follow. And as a last one, the different APIs might require different error handling techniques, leading some inconsistencies. So this kind of operator with this interface can help us to avoid such situations. So yeah, but actually we have some limitations and areas that still can be improved there. First of all, nomenclature, which the proposal needs to clear term for objects implementing symbol.result. And finally blocks. There is no any new syntax for finally blocks, so there is still space to think about. And last but not least, we have Dino 2 unknowns. As you probably know, Dino was created to be a modern all-in-one zero config toolchain for JavaScript and TypeScript development. Also, we have some jokes that Dino is actually Node.js sorted out, as you can see. At the bottom on the image, we have Node sorted, and this result us to Dino. But no more jokes there. New Dino 2 includes such a good features like backward compatibility with Node.js and npm, native support with package.json and Node modules. Package management is included already in Dino 2. And also many good things like we will have long-term support releases. We'll support private NPM registries and other things. You can read about this topic, and I will leave all the links for all of them in the video. So thank you guys for the attention. Not sure if you have any questions. That was just a news I grabbed for you for today. But if you still have something, feel free to write in the chat or speak there. I think we have one raised hand from someone. Okay, no worries, that's fine. So I think we can move forward to our next speaker. Let me stop sharing my screen. Hi, Evgeny. Hi, Dmitry. So our next speaker is Dmitry, our senior front-end developer, who not only dives deep into front-end code, but also focuses on development approaches, productive workflows, and optimization. Dmitry today will talk about some importance of not just thinking about what are you doing, but also how you are doing it. So, Dmitry, passing microphone to you.
Hello, guys. I hope everyone can hear me well. So basically, Pavel already told everything I wanted to tell, so maybe I should just finish. But no. So now you see some regression. And more regression. And now you shouldn't. Okay, fine. So basically, hey everyone, my name is Dmitry. I worked at Kamax for about 5 years probably already. Have some experience in front end, have some experience on back end, have some different experiences. And today I want to talk about something that I'm gonna refer as meta coding. To me, it is something about one level up of code. It means, for me, it means like every process you perform on your computer while writing actual code. This is meta coding. The thought or idea itself is pretty pretty much simple. You can see it on the screen. Think not only what are you doing, but how are you doing. You can probably split it in some minor practices or questions or ideas, like knowing your tools and learning new ones, creating your own tools and workflows, focusing on the process, meaning that you might try to identify something that inconvenient in your workflow, something that frustrating you, or something that you have hard feelings on. And of course, question everything, like, am I doing this right? How can I do this faster? What do I do to make it less frustrating? Something like that. And that's all the slides I have, actually. And I will show you probably on some examples what I mean and what you can try to think about. Just remember, examples themselves are not kind of the most important part here. Focus on metacoding, not code itself. So imagine following situation. You work on some large Vuetify project. As you can see from the folder name, large Vuetify project, it's big. Maybe it's not, but just imagine. It has pretty standard folder structure, like components, languages, and stuff. Let me show you how the project looks, actually. We have some page with users here. We have some creation form. Like we have two types of user we can add, like user with number, user with password. Each one has its own form with its own fields. So we can see the difference with name, phone number, messengers. We have functionality to edit these forms, these users, and that's pretty much it. Imagine you've been working on this project for some time, and you added already two types of user before. The project is scaling, and they ask you to add new user type again. Like, the problem here is, like, the task itself is boring, and you as a developer probably don't like too much boring and routine tasks. At least I don't know. So how we can make this process a little bit more entertaining, or like a little bit more pleasant to ourselves as developers. So first problem we're gonna have, since we did not add new user type for about like few months, we don't actually remember all the places we actually need to go to find all the files for this specific feature. How do we add this new type of user? Traditional approach would be probably to go to like pages folder to find this page, index page, check all the components we have here, like add user dialog. We check some imports like add user dialog, edit user dialog, and so forth. We'll go to each one of those files. We'll go to probably translations. Some files we probably remember. We have some utils functions, right? So we can go and see what's going on there. But this process kind of slow and frustrating, isn't it? So our first problem, how do we solve this? How do we bring up all the files in the project that related to this specific feature of adding new user? You might think, well, we will name our files somehow, like in some specific pattern, like each one of them will contain some user in it or something like that. That's one of the possible options. Another options that I came up recently, like, why don't we just create some hashtag comments that will allow us to bring up all the files related to some feature. Like if we'll go to search and we try to, oh my God, feature, add user. And that way we kind of simplify our job of finding relevant files for some specific feature. That's only one idea. Don't focus only on this specific example. That may work for you or may not work for you. For this specific case and this mock project, it works pretty much fine. But you can come up with something else. Maybe you have ideas. I'll be glad to hear some new ideas on this specific problem resolution, if you have any. Let's move on. Imagine we resolved all the problem with searching files, right? We have all the files. We know what files we need to modify to to add this specific new user type. This user type is gonna be user with token, right? User with token. It will have some fields like name, access token, refresh token, and we need to create form for that specific user type. How are we gonna do that? Again, traditional approach gonna be probably like to go to components, forms, take one form, like select it, copy, paste it, change some variables, probably like user with number form will become user with token form, we'll replace data fields, rename some stuff, and yeah, that's it. We'll have another user form. But again, how can we make this less kind of frustrating? It's just simple copy pasting won't work here. Maybe we can come up with something different. How about we go to VS Code, for example, and we can try to create something like add user form snippet. It's pretty easy feature that VS Code has itself. And we could just create snippet for this specific feature. We can not only use like default Vuetify, say Vuetify snippets extensions that VS Code has by default. We can pretty easy create our own snippets. You can create it like for your project. Maybe you will come up with ideas how you will create it for your project. Maybe you have some repetitive code that you can't refactor it that way, so you won't repeat like completely copy and pasting. For such situation, you will probably can do something like that. And we can like add user form, and we created like new file with almost valid template. Or another option, how do we do that in another way? We can just open some form that we already have, right? We can go and ask Copilot, could you create similar file but user with token that has access and refresh token stream fields instead? Let's see if it's gonna work. Maybe Copilot will help us to generate something reasonable. And as you can see, it generates pretty much valuable piece of code. That's cool. But again, this is searching files, those form creations by some other form. This is all seems so kind of repetitive. Each time you have to do that again. You know that project will scale and you'll have to do that again. What we can do here? Ideally, I would like to have some perfect button that I will hit and I'll have some new user type added just by having, like, for example, just by having user with token type, I would like to have such ability to create whole working, like, so I can open and I'll see new user with token. How can I do that? We can do that by running some scripts. As you can see, I just created DevTools folder with some script, which I provided as parameter passed to the new user type. And let's see, what do we have? What the script does. Actually, it does every modification I need to add new user type here. Example, it imports, as you can see to the right, it imports a new user form to add user dialog. Also, the same goes for edit user dialog. It modifies map. It creates form. It even adds translation section. It doesn't look perfect, but anyway, it's there. It also modified some mocks. It modified some types. It modified some files that actually needed to be modified when you create new user type. Let's see if it worked. We open our dialog, and now we have our user with token here. Let's see if form works. Oops. Yeah, it's here, but we have some minor issues. They were left there intentionally, and because I have just a few days to prepare. Yeah, so it doesn't have to be perfect, this script, but we can probably easily fix it. But that's not the point. The point is, again, you can try to. Idea here is that you have to come up with some ideas sometimes to make your coding a little bit less frustrating, a little bit more fun. You can learn something new, learn some new languages. For example, for this specific script, I picked Perl programming language. Why did I pick Perl? Because I knew nothing about Perl. But what I learned about Perl. Perl is fun. It has fun kind of syntax constructions. Let's say open or die. That's pretty radical, but it's fun. What this string does, actually, it opens file to read. If it failed, the script dies. Yeah. Also, it has pretty interesting tools to manipulate text files. It provides easy kind of regular expressions to replace stuff in lines of file. So as you can see, we replace this part varref to user ref that we get from parsing our user TypeScript file, and some more replacements. And we have some templates where we use those replacements. So we have text field that we repeatedly put in our form depending on script user type fields. And we have some user form in text format that has all those variables that we'll need to replace for users. And yeah, that's pretty much it. That's what I wanted to share with you. Maybe you have, I want you just to encourage to think about your projects, your flows, your kind of ways to improve your coding skills and your processes. And that's it from me. Maybe you have some questions, comments, concerns, anything.
I have one. Thank you, Dmitry, first of all, for your presentation. I have a question. How to not get into situation when you're doing optimization like that for the sake of optimization, you know?
You have to probably ask yourself right questions. How much time you spend on how much time you need to create such optimization, and how much time it will save you, actually. So just being reasonable often enough.
So analysis, first of all, right?
Yes, of course. You have to question everything. Remember, should I do that? Who am I? Where am I? Such stuff. Anything else?
Only dumps is sure of everything, right? We have to ask ourselves for any little things even.
Yeah. $50 fields to make it worse. I don't think so. It depends actually on your specific task. For this specific example, the problem is not in this form specifically. It's in this flow. Imagine you're there is nothing creating about this job to add new user type in such project, in such situation. And if you work on the project long enough and you know the project very well, and it's you're pretty sure what's going on next. It will go few months later, you'll be asked again to add new user type. And instead of just doing this manually, you can just run one script and make some few tweaks and create this stuff in a few minutes instead of hours. And so it will save time, but again, depending on the scale. And this specific example, again, don't focus on example. The idea here is not example. The idea here, it's about identifying your workflows and identifying issues with your workflows. Do you do whatever you do fine? What do you do to optimize this stuff? Do you need to write script, or maybe you use some snippets or use some tools? Maybe you use cron tools. Maybe you need something else. You go and discover, you learn something new, and I believe this will make you a better developer. You'll have more experiences, and this will bring new ideas from learning stuff. And yeah, that's it.
From my side, not a big question, but rather maybe the diversion for discussion. So from my side, it feels like there is a lot of value from rather than optimizing code or project or development practices, focus on something that is nearby, so something like interaction with design, or maybe some tweaking issues, or maybe documentation. Do you have the same approach for these as well?
this approach applies not only to the code itself, but this approach applies to everything in your life. Like, I'm serious with that, actually. You may think that this is not like an idea even. It's more like a mindset, a way of looking to things that like around you. So this applies to everything. This example that I showed today covered just like small kind of subset of the ways you can do your coding. So of course it applies to everything.
Exactly. Right now we are not using paper maps, right? If you want to visit another city, you're just Googling an address and making directions for that, right? Same for the coding. We using AI tools to optimize our work in different ways. Like, and what is also important, I think, we have to learn our main tools we're working on. For example, I'm working with WebStorm, and we have such a good things like multi-cursors and stuff like that. Somebody just working in the WebStorm, like in Notepad with nothing else, just writing something. I believe we have to learn tools we are using in our work.
Yep. Also, I've sent links to the project itself on GitHub. So everyone who wants to take a look at this Perl script and learn something new about Perl can take a look. And
yeah, thank you, Dmitry, again for this beautiful presentation. And let's move on. We finally got to our CTO, Yevgeny. He will present a talk he gave last week on Vue.js DE conference in Germany. So, Evgeny, please. Please turn on your microphone and forget to do that.
That's a pain. Okay. Hello, everyone, again. And I see a couple of speakers here as well, Zoe and Klaus. Hello. Nice to meet you again. Might be not the most interesting presentation for you if you've seen it already, but maybe that would be of interest to someone else. But okay, so my topic would be cooking up a UI framework. And okay, we have some technical issues. Got it. Right. So my idea would be to have throw at you a couple of ideas, and at the end of the talk, you would have like understanding of whether you want to use some other UI framework and just use its components, or you would use some kind of wrapper for UI framework as a library, or you would use your own UI framework. And let's get going. So who I am? I am Epic Mac CTO. I did a couple of development projects. And I'm also creator and developer of Vuestic and Vuestic admin, which is a UI framework and a UI template as well. So this makes me very relevant for this talk. A couple of words about the history of how we created our own framework. We started from admin dashboard. It was pretty popular, and it was not great in the sense that it contained components as well, apart from the admin panel itself. So we thought, okay, let's extract components so that users can update it easily. So we did that. And we added some more components, and we created a new project, Vuestic UI. Right now, we are working on the framework, and we are doing stuff, and we added documentation on Nuxt 2. This is like very flexible documentation, worked for us. We tried to move it to Nuxt 3. It didn't work too well because at the moment, Nuxt 3 was a bit meh, a bit unstable. We moved back to Nuxt, And we finally again settled on Nux 3 at about end of 2023. We also switched to Vue 3 and composition API. In the scope of this transition, it was a very painful process, moving every component to Vue 3. But now we are here, and we were, I think, one of the first frameworks who moved to Vue 3 fully. We also added Storybook for smoother development, so all our testing and development happens right now in Storybook. And we are still working on it. I wasn't like a single developer. I was part of the team, but in all of these things, I was pretty deeply involved. Right. So let's go to your own solution. Let's try to figure out what works for you. Agenda. First, we'll decide the type of the framework you want to create. So like a no framework, some framework, or like your own framework. Then we will think of favorite tools and libraries. Then we will talk about CSS, about testing, and documentation. And first thing is, I have a question. So do you need to create a UI framework? And I have a more detailed questions. And you can raise your hand if this applies to you, and let me know. So if it fits you. So first question is, you want to extract components and use them for multiple projects. What that means, like similar to Vuestic template, you would have a project of some sort where components are baked in, and you want to move them to a separate library to possibly reuse in other components. So anyone? Applies to me, so I rise. Okay. Okay, I still technical issue, sorry. Maybe you have an idea to open source part of your code base. Similar case, but move UI framework, get some more testing, get some more involvement from community, something like that. Again, a case for us, so I will raise a hand. Or you want multiple teams to work on the same project without overlap. Here, let's say you have a team that would be specialized for framework, and then you have a team that would be specializing on the projects. So then don't interact with each other. That's the case for me as well. And oops. Or maybe you need to speed up development for new projects. This case is like when you have a framework, and the framework is a part of boilerplate, and you would apply this boilerplate to multiple new projects. And maybe you have like maybe 10, you maybe 15 projects. Maybe you're doing white labeling, so you need to spam this. So again, worst case for me, maybe it's a case for you. So if you didn't answer any of these questions, yes, you don't need to have a UI framework of yours. You can just use existing one, I believe, and be pretty happy with it. So we are past that. We have two other options. So these are when you answered some of these questions. So first option is you will wrap existing UI framework. And second option, you would use your own framework when you need a lot of flexibility. So let's start with wrapping UI framework. It has some cons, like breaking changes hurt, and you inherit a bunch of features you won't use, because a modern framework, it has like a lot of props, a lot of components. I would say maybe 70% you won't use ever. And they don't have a good way to granulate this functionality. So like minimum granularity generally is like component level. And that's just like still too much features. And it has some pros, obviously. Biggest one is low commitment. So you grab this bundle, put it in your project, everything works fine. So majority of your cases is closed. That's very good. And it could be very flexible if you use some styled components. So depending on the framework you choose, they provide a different level of customization. So something like Prime Vue, let's say, it allows you to use unstyled components and basically push your styling to the very deep to the component. You don't have to overwrite. You don't have to fight with it. So probably all your component needs, or close to all your components needs, would be covered by this solution. I have a couple of just general advices. Apart from looking at stars, looking at GitHub issues, looking how well supported framework is, looking at comparing what components you need and what components you don't need. I have a couple of like more high-level things to share. One is I recommend checking UI framework primarily with design goals in mind. So like, let's say you have a Figma, it would be perfect if your UI framework chose looks like what you have in Figma. And like, let's say we have a Beautify, which is material design framework. And if you don't have material design in Figma or in your current application, it might be a big shock for everyone when you make a switch. So that's something to consider. Also, it's very important to focus your research when you compare components on most complex components, because these would be very hard to implement on your own if you make a mistake, if you don't notice something is missing. So check these first. And you can rely on existing UI framework tools to have this customization ongoing. And a mistake I often sometimes see is that instead of using what framework offers, we try to overwrite it like more in a hard way, like with CSS or using your own component when something fits. But right now, a lot of frameworks, they offer a lot of flexibility, so you can configure colors, breakpoints, default props, icons, translations, and many other things. You can also generally customize your CSS with variables, and only then, when you like exhausted these variables customization opportunities, you can move to direct overrides. But this is, I think, should be like maybe 10% of all your customization. I would also recommend to create a development and testing environment, even though you like use the existing framework and they obviously do some testing. It still is very much a good thing to have all your customizations covered with storybook stories. You don't have to cover all props, but let's say you restyle the select, it would be great if you have this restyle somewhere available as a story with visual testing. And that's it for wrapping a framework. Now let's talk about creating your own framework, which would be way harder. Oh my God, way harder. So that's not a good solution generally. Yeah, that's a hard decision to make. It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of effort. It also takes a lot of expertise in developers. I would recommend even to make estimate on how much time something takes is, I think, good when you have at least like a year or two of experience developing frameworks, because the work is very much different from you from what you have on the project. It's just way tighter, way more investigation needed, and components themselves are like insanely complex compared to what we have in applications generally. And breaking changes will still hurt you, and you will still need some kind of strategy to offset this, but less, because that's self-inflicted pain and you can brace a bit. It's not sudden, and there are pros of it. You can be as flexible as you want it to be. So all features you can dream of, you can implement. Nothing will break, absolutely. Yeah, and first step when you start developing your framework would be gathering requirements, and I heavily advise to check existing references. Again, a big mistake we often see is that a framework is developed like from the mind of developer, not from the existing solutions. And existing solutions are very much different, and they're very robust. So these frameworks, they're on the market for a long time already, and a lot of development went into it. So it's way easier to just take what they have and modify a bit rather than develop on your own from the ground up. Yep. Another thing is that we don't have any kind of standard between UI frameworks. So I would recommend to stick to maybe one framework and use naming from them alone, because in any different framework, it will be different naming for almost like everything. One more recommendation is using Vue.use for JavaScript utilities. There is a lot of things that are, again, standardized, covered there. You don't have to implement it. Just take it from Vue.use. And it could maybe cut even for some bundle size if your customer is also using the Vue.use in the project. When it comes to CSS, I think the most powerful tool would be CSS variables. But because it allows you to connect your framework to the project without introducing any kind of SCSS or other utilities which might break, or your end user wouldn't be happy having them. They don't need maybe SCSS, and you're forcing them to use it. I would also recommend using CSS variables for rules you plan to change, because sometimes rules are being exposed, which are, let's say you change it and it breaks component, something like display property or something like that. Some more things is it's a good idea to have support for utility-first CSS frameworks. And I'm not saying you have to implement it into components. You can use just CSS without issues. But it's a great idea to bundle your framework with Tailwind or Uno CSS, because if you develop framework on your own, CSS framework or the CSS utilities package, then it's error prone. It would be different from Tailwind, and actually a good solution for user would be, for me as a developer of a framework, would be something like, okay, so just throw it away and use Tailwind. And I do not want to talk to tell this, and so it's ideal to just include it out of the box. And user don't have to learn new syntax. It provides easy CSS purging, so low bundle size. It's very stable. It's easy to debug, and it combines nicely when you extend framework. Now to testing. My default recommendation for testing of UI framework is using Storybook plus interaction tests plus visual tests. Again, minimal effort, very valuable testing, because you can have story encompasses everything we want to see in the feature. So let's say you use unit tests and you tested something works. Let's say like selection works. It might not mean it works, because there might be some CSS issue, and you won't be able to detect it with unit tests. But visual tests allow you to do that. It's also possible to test composables with it, and this is done by creating how do you call it, mock component, let's say, where you would pull composable and assemble everything around it so that composable is functioning, and then you can test all the cases in composable. Again, composables are, for Vue.js, very tricky to test outside of components sometimes, because they manifest in CSS sometimes, in HTML sometimes. It's just not good for unit tests. Unit tests are a bit high effort generally, and but quick to run. And I would recommend to apply them to non-UI logic. And I have an example of Storybook. Nothing fancy here. We'll have a story at the left, and it will be represented as a component, and you'll have some buttons to interact with it when interaction is needed. When it's not, you will have just a component. And it has interaction tests, which are like unit tests or like small E2E tests. Easier to see them this way because you will have some kind of reproduction in the story itself. And you can just navigate through steps of the test to see what's going on with component. So it makes it very easy to debug and develop. And for visual testing, I would recommend Chromatic. You can have your own version of Chromatic. You can use something else like Percy. Chromatic is the simplest one to get started. So, and it also allows you to host Storybook. So you don't even need to invest in hosting this way. One more facet of testing I want to talk about is compatibility testing. And what that means is that, let's say you have a framework and you have different environments that use frameworks. And that might be, Webpack, or that might be SSR, it might be SPA applications. And you have no idea if any of these works until you test it. So my recommendation to achieve this confidence is to have a kitchen sink page with all components on which you will run visual testing. And the done condition would be it should render without errors. And we will render this page for each environment we target, which would be Next SPA, Next SSR, Vite, Vue.js, and Webpack. Webpack is still very popular, so if your library is somewhat public, still recommended. And when it comes to documentation, it's a different topic. You can also use Storybook at first. It's not super flexible, but it allows you to check component API, go through usage examples, and you can also add generic documentation pages in there. When you grow up a bit, you can use a static site generator like WordPress. Again, small step, and you have way more flexibility for your documentation. If you have a lot of time, you can use Next and play with it. It can fulfill all your dreams. We give an SSR as well. So if someone looks for your site, they will have very nice search engine optimization, flexible page structure, and also Next documentation is a great demo of Next support. So if something breaks with your SSR support, then you will see it immediately. One more recommendation about documentation is to skip translations. It's just, for some reason, way harder to do it, because we have a lot of edge cases. We might have double escapes for some cases where we need to have a translation and example. And overall, it felt like it's not really valuable enough to invest so much time. It just takes too much architecture to have these translations nicely. And translators are getting smarter and smarter day by day, and it's just easier to just run through Google Translate and see the prettily translated documentation without any effort. So I would recommend keeping everything on English or whatever is your primary language. Yep. And I think that's it. We have a couple of takeaways. First, ask yourselves a question: do you need to truly create a new UI framework, or you can just use something that exists and not spend too much time? For customization, use CSS variables and utility-first CSS frameworks. For testing and development, use Storybook, and use unit tests for non-UI logic. And that's it. Maybe some questions.
Thank you, Yevgeny. I have one question, actually. What do you think about web components? Do they have some potential to replace UI frameworks from all sources?
So I think we had an experiment with them. I'm not super privy to details, but it was a kind of favor. So we didn't walk in that direction at all. We tried, but I think flexibility was not there, or something with slots. I'm not sure exactly what was wrong, but something was wrong. Maxim, maybe you can tell on your part if Maxim is there. Maxim is not there. Okay. Yeah, something was wrong. I'm not sure what. So.
You mean something was wrong with Vue, right? With web components and
web,
Vue.
web components themselves. So architecture was not flexible enough. So maybe it was inject provide or something, because we have like some building blocks that have to be there, and something very critical wasn't there, and it was a big pain to, I think, use them for our case. So we decided not to. Just too much work, and I'm not sure about details on that. So yeah, this is what I know.
Okay. I see that Maxim writing that web components are way harder to use than UI framework. Yeah, I just try to imagine the situation when we have good functionality for them, if they have any way to replace all existing solutions we have for many frameworks, for React, for Vue, for anything else.
Not happening recently. Maybe they will have some kind of other implementation, but I'm not seeing this happening.
Yeah, as Maxim said in the chat, we have a build from Vue to web components, but you're losing a lot of features from Vue, like the most basic as named slots or slot bind. So not today, maybe sometime later, right?
Maybe.
Yeah, so if we don't have any more questions, I think we can wrap up. So thank you, Yevgeny, again for this great presentation. And yeah, thank you guys to all of you for joining our meetups number 2. We plan to host those meetups monthly, so feel free to register and join. I hope you're walking away with new insights from today, some AA moments, and maybe some new friends in Vue and programming community. So thank you guys, and see you on the next meetups. Bye-bye.
Bye.